This SRQ047 is a perfect example of a great Seiko chronograph at what I consider a slightly undervalued price. I think there is a lot of watch for the money here. And I love the fact that Seiko is starting to really expand their chronograph line with both the automatic versions and the solar versions. I actually bought a solar Speedtimer recently, this Colonel Pogue color scheme. I love this piece. This is a really fun sports watch from the Pro Specs line, but I'm probably more excited about the automatic line. I think this one doesn't get the attention that it deserves. It doesn't get the flowers that I think that it needs. So let's talk about this. This is based off of a design from 1974, the original Panda. And I really like vintage Seiko. I know I'm not alone there in that sentiment. I know a lot of watch fans, they like vintage Seiko divers. They like vintage Seiko dressy pieces. So I like the fact that this is another heritage release, and it's from a more underrated type of watch that Seiko makes, chronographs. Chronographs are never the bread and butter for almost any brand outside of maybe Breitling. So it's just nice to see Seiko focusing more on this type of complication because they have some excellent history with this style of watch. They've been making chronographs for a little over 60 years now. They started off with an in-house mono pusher back in 1964, and then a few years later they developed a fully automatic chronograph caliber, and that was arguably the first automatic chronograph released to the market back in 1969. And that was called the 6139. I owned one of those, and it's one of the few watches that I regret flipping. Now let's talk about this specific SRQ047, what makes it great, where it falls short, and hopefully give you some good information to learn more about this automatic speed timer. Thank you to Exquisite Timepieces for lending in this example for a presentation. I've been working with Exquisite, this family-owned AD in Florida, for years now in presenting watches and also buying from them personally. I bought my solar speed timer from them. I bought my Seiko Uemura from them. If you're shopping Seiko, definitely check them out. I've linked them below. Now this watch is 42 millimeters in case diameter, 49.1 millimeters lug tip to lug tip, 14.6 millimeters in total height, and that is to the top of this double domed sapphire crystal. 20 millimeters is the lug width, and there is no denying, no getting away from it. This is a proper sized sport watch. I love the size. I love the kind of chunkiness. I love the presence on the wrist. And I love the fact that this is not sub 40 millimeters in diameter. I know you small wrist kings and queens out there will disagree with me, but I love a big Seiko watch. There is a magic about a big Seiko sports piece. It just works so well. It's comfortable. It's all is right in the world when Seiko releases a 42 millimeter plus sized sports piece. So this I love, but not everybody will love the presence of this watch. It has 100 meters of water resistance. It has, again, a sapphire crystal, but excellent anti-reflective treatment, which I think is so important when you're trying to gauge the time at a glance. You're not getting distracting reflections off of this crystal. And I also love seeing the lovely details of the dial at a higher degree of clarity. And this really does have lovely dial details. Overall, this has an awesome movement, an excellent in-house movement. Seiko released the 8R48 on the 50th anniversary of their first chronograph release, and that was, again, that mono pusher from 1964. And with this 8R48, they really did not skimp on anything in regards to the tech specs on this now decade-old movement. So this does have a vertical clutch, a column wheel, shorter stems for stutter-free engagement of the complication. This has a 3-pointed hammer with a specially shaped cam for perfect flyback synchronization. And I have to say, the action is so satisfying. It's crisp. It's easy to use. I like the size of these pump style pushers. The movement has upgraded finishing, which is nice to see from Seiko. Generally, they only reserve the upgraded finishing for their top of the line products, their most expensive products. This caliber has 34 joules, a 4 hertz beat rate. So this ticks essentially 28,800 times every hour. And that's also slightly uncommon for the brand. They generally go 3 hertz, but this caliber is a 4 hertz caliber, and this has 45 hours of power reserve, which really is not amazing when you consider you can find higher power reserve from other movements. But considering the fact that this does have so many of the tech goodies, those specifications, the fact that you can time something, you can engage this chronograph without damaging the movement and leave it running all the time. 45 hours is not bad. This does have MEMS tech in the creation of some of the small components like the balance. So the balance is ultra lightweight, ultra precise. It should run a long time without warping, without being worn down. And there's nice energy transfer with that lightweight nature of those small components. This has a 30-minute counter, a 12-hour counter, a sub-seconds complication, and a date complication. So I love this movement. If you haven't been able to tell, I think this is a super solid movement, but I only say that because Seiko places this in watches that cost, around $2,000. This watch retails for $2,500. And you can always find a good discount on a Seiko. So the going rate is lower, and when you consider this is a column wheel, vertical clutch, all of those components, all of the tech specs, in addition to the vintage styling, the in-house history, the lovely dial details, you consider everything, and I think this, again, packs a value punch. I think you have to go upscale with a Longines, or maybe drop the price and go Tissot if you're going to find comparable value from competitors. So I really like the selection of this movement at the price, and Seiko does sell this caliber to micro brands, to third-party brands, and they name it the NE86. Now, I mentioned the dial details being so lovely. There is a vertical grain silver dial or opaline dial with black sunken sub registers. This, again, going back to that 1974 Panda reference. This has polished applied markers, long hand members, Lumibright lume. I love the orange color accenting. Again, that's paying homage to that 1974 reference. And this also has the bent chronograph seconds tip, which I always appreciate seeing in a chronograph. I honestly thought that I would hate the date at the 430, but after seeing this in person, I don't hate it. There's a nice bevel in the circular opening, and it is nice having the date. It does not feel intrusive like I anticipated it to feel. Now, lastly, let's talk about the bracelet. I think this is great, but not great from how solid it might feel or the link connection system. No, it's great in the fact that it is the retro design from the 1974 Panda that this watch gets a lot of its design inspiration from. So I love the look. I love the fact that we're not getting another oyster style or Jubilee style bracelet. This feels like it has some more character with this design. So I think that's awesome from a consumer standpoint, from a Seiko fan standpoint. But sadly, there is no sport clasp with this. There is no micro quick adjustment system, and that is a definite area for improvement. And I feel that this clasp is the weakest part about this watch, and I would love for Seiko to address this specific aspect of the watch. But let's summarize here. Again, I think the value is present. The history is here with this brand. This does not have, in my opinion, credible competitors. Again, I think you have to go upscale or lower in price to find watches that have that similar value punch. Nothing in this specific territory jumps to my mind as a valid competitor. So I think Seiko owns this part of the market. And I think that this, again, considering the movement, the details, the history, the finishing, the presence, I think this watch should cost more than it does. I'm glad that it doesn't cost more, but I think Seiko could realistically justify, pricing this closer to $3,000 than at $2,500. Now, as soon or if Seiko, if they ever do a kernel poke color scheme on this automatic speed timer, I'm buying it immediately, and I'm pairing it with my solar speed timer with that kernel poke color scheme. So I hope that that is a future release from Seiko. It's an iconic color scheme that is distinctive to the brand. So I hope that that happens. And feel free to chime in with your thoughts in the comment section. Let me know if you see the value here in this version. Let me know what you think about the specifics of this movement. Are you interested in this Seiko, or do you shop the divers and the dressy pieces like so many watch collectors do? Thank you again to Exquisite for sending this for a review. If you're shopping Seiko, reach out to my sales associate. I've linked his contact information in the description. Thanks.